Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video, and in today's video I'm going to be giving my prediction for the Terri Harper versus Natalie Zimmermann fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like the video if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into this. So this is GBM Sports' first world title fight to be on one of their shows, and they're doing it at the Eco Power Stadium in Doncaster, the home of Terri Harper. And it's great to see, realistically, because I've been at many GBM Sports events in my time of doing interviews and speaking to a lot of different fighters, and I've spoke to the promoter Izzy as if quite a few times, and I've seen the progression that he's made with GBM and with the likes of Adam Smith getting on board as well. It's only seemingly gotten so much better, and they're progressing really well. Yes, this isn't a huge world title fight, but nonetheless they haven't been a promotion for that long, and they've already gotten a world title fight with a pretty stacked undercard with some great names on it, some recognizable names on it. And that's realistically something that's really important for promotions. They want to have these upcoming prospects which they can put on these shows, but at the same time they need to have some names in which are recognizable, and I feel like they have that, especially with the likes of a Terri Harper and a couple other fights on this card, which I'll touch upon one in just a moment. But like I mentioned, this is a homecoming, I suppose, to an extent, for Terri Harper, and to be fair, I think she herself at one point did not expect to be in this position, because when she'd lost to Sandy Ryan, I was there, I watched it live, and I really were disappointed with Terri Harper's performance, and I think she looked quite weak, and inevitably all that Sandy Ryan did was just way too much for her, and she just got completely bullied by Sandy Ryan, and inevitably it showed that she just couldn't deal with the weight at all. And Terri Harper has always been a fighter who's taken risks and gone for big fights and been in quite a few big fights, and realistically, yes, it's not always gone her way. I mean, she's had defeats against the like of Alicia Baumgartner, which was a pretty crazy knockout where she got knocked out, basically still stood up. But yeah, that was pretty crazy, and then she was able to recover from that and then go on to more fights. She fought Brackhouse, in which she drew. Obviously, she fought Sandy Ryan, which she lost. She fought Natasha Jonas, I believe, and she lost. And then she also took that big jump up to fight Hannah Ranking, which moved her from the lightweight division to the super welterweight division, which was such a big jump up in weight. But she was able to win that one, and then she kind of, stuck around campaigning at that super welterweight / welterweight division, and she'd had a bit of success, but when she fought Brackhouse, she did look quite poor and quite slow in that one, and I feel like she was missing something in which she had in the lower weight divisions, especially more so that speed. And then obviously she fought Sandy Ryan, and she got completely, like I say, bullied and couldn't deal with the strength of Sandy Ryan. And then again, like I say, a lot of people were calling for her to retire and didn't really think there was that much left for her career. But then she dropped back down into the lightweight division in her last fight and fought up against Rhiannon Dixon. And that was a fight in which she took as the away fighter, and I believe it was in Manchester, and she would have had the crowd against her. And Rhiannon Dixon was, I believe, 10-0 at the time. She was one of Matchroom's most exciting, world champions coming through, and she was looking really good and having a lot of success in her fights, and she was coached by Anthony Croller, and again she looked like a very tough fighter to be able to beat. But Terri Harper did really well in that fight, and yes, she did slow down a little bit, and I think she got caught with a couple good punches in the kind of mid rounds, maybe like round 6, round 7. But she won all the early rounds, and then I think she came back really well as well. There was a time in which she did seem like she was slowing down, and she did seem like she might physically be getting a bit weaker, but she came back, and I think that's what in the lightweight division she can do. I think she showcases that she can fight better in the lightweight division, and it wasn't exactly her age or the amount of fights she's been in that was the problem. It was actually just clearly the weight difference, and there is a clear difference. Welterweight to lightweight is a big jump, and she physically looked a lot stronger. There was times where she was clinching up with Rhiannon Dixon, and inevitably Terri Harper was able to hold her own, and yes, she was going on the back foot for the most part, but when she did let her hands go, perhaps I would have liked to seen her utilize her jab a bit more or let her right go a little bit more, but when she did, she landed and she had success, and Rhiannon Dixon was made to look pretty poor, and then Terri Harper busted up the nose of Dixon and inevitably, like I say, had quite a lot of success, and inevitably, of course, did enough to win convincingly, and it was a much better performance and a much more improved performance that did showcase, the Terri Harper in which we'd seen in better contests where she was, on the come up and, she was looking good and she was having success. And again, like I said, that was probably the highlight, arguably, of her career when all the odds were stacked against her. So maybe she's one of them fighters where she needs all the odds stacked against her to be able to thrive. But, like I say, coming off that victory, which was arguably the best of her career, she did then deserve a homecoming, and she has, then gone on to deserve, now a stadium fight in which is going to be her as the main focus. And yes, she's against an unbeaten fighter in Natalie Zimmermann. I'm quite glad that they've at least found an unbeaten fighter. Yes, it's not one of the fellow world champions, and there probably is a few better options out there of who she could have fought against. But in a first title defense, why not go and put her up against somebody like a Natalie Zimmermann? She's a German fighter who, yes, if you watch the tape of her, she isn't amazing. There's quite a few things that she does wrong. I mean, seemingly she seems quite wary when she's throwing, and she doesn't, find her range that well. She will, I think, improve throughout the fight, and she'll be there to try and make it into a bit of a war. If Terri Harper's just going to stand in front of Zimmerman, then Zimmerman is going to pump out the straight shots and probably land a couple that might look quite nice, but inevitably, I think she is quite poor. Like I say, I think she can look a bit fearful at times when she gets caught with shots, and she's, like I say, messy with her footwork. She'll stand straight on. She has limited shot variation. I don't think she fights in close that well. I think, yes, she might have bits of success with the straights, but I think Terri Harper as a whole is a much more well-rounded, much more complete fighter than that of a Natalie Zimmermann, and I think it is going to be a convincing defense of the WBO World Lightweight title, and I think she is going to win convincingly via unanimous decision. I think perhaps if she really wanted to, she could step it on in the first few rounds and go on to actually try and win via stoppage, which I would like to see for a homecoming stadium fight, but inevitably I think she probably won't, and I think, Zimmerman, yes, she's not amazingly skilled in my opinion or technical, but of course, as an unbeaten fighter, she doesn't know how to lose. She's never been in that kind of bad position. Obviously, she hasn't fought anywhere near the level of opposition in which somebody like Terri Harper has fought. I mean, Zimmerman, I don't even know if she's faced an unbeaten opponent realistically. She's coming off a couple fights in Spain where the opponents were, nothing too crazy, just fighters with a couple of fights, one win, one loss or something like that, or like a debutant. And then before that, when she was fighting in Germany, they were all just journeywoman opponents in which, quite often Zimmerman was making look, relatively good, but then she'd come on, into the later rounds and then be able to inevitably win. And so, like I say, I think Harper's going to be able to win convincingly. Then who she goes on to fight next, I think is definitely interesting. I think the lightweight division at the moment is in quite a good position, realistically. I mean, obviously, with Matchroom at the moment, they've not really got any. They're just kind of lost Beatrice Ferreira, seemingly. And Beatrice Ferreira, of course, has the IBO title, and she's going to fight Ferreira on the Most Valuable Promotion show in a couple, I think in like a month or so. And so, I would love to see a winner of that go on to fight a Terri Harper. But at the same time, it will be interesting to see what happens with Terri Harper because, obviously, like I've said, most Matchroom don't have that many women's fighters in the lightweight division, let alone in any division anymore. They've lost quite a few of their fighters recently. I mean, they've lost Ellie Scotney. They've lost, well, not lost, but Sky Nicholson lost. They lost Ramla Ali. Who else? They've lost Chantel Cameron. Obviously, that was a little while ago. Katie Taylor's going and doing her own thing, and seemingly not really too much involved with Matchroom at the moment. And it's interesting, there's quite a few women in which, aren't getting involved with Matchroom and, are preferring to go to most valuable promotions. I mean, of course, Rhiannon and Dixon went on to lose. There really isn't, like I say, that many women's fighters getting involved. And, we can see that. I mean, Sandy Ryan just lost as well. As we can also see that because there is a lot less actually featuring on Matchroom cards as well, and seemingly Matchroom aren't really too fussed about pushing the women's fighters in which they have. Yes, they've just signed a new one, but she's going to have a few fights before she can get to a level in which she's fighting for world titles. So, it wouldn't surprise me if someone like a Terri Harper perhaps goes on to join most valuable promotions. Again, like I say, it really wouldn't surprise me. So many have joined most valuable promotions at the moment, and I think it is realistically good to see because with Matchroom, with Queensbury, or with any of these other promotions, I mean, some of the ones like Dina Forsand or Mikado have just been fighting in their home country and not really challenging or not really trying to push for unifications, and it showcases that they're able to build up a good record as a result, but it means they're not getting tested against the best. And of course, as boxing fans, we want to see the best versus the best. So it is good to see that most valuable promotions are valuing the women's division and are wanting to put on good events with female fighters. And it wouldn't surprise me, like I say, Terri Harper, I don't know if she's still signed with Matchroom. I don't really know what's happening with that. So like I say, it wouldn't surprise me if perhaps she goes on to go and join most valuable promotions if she wants to try and have another tough test in her career. If not, then maybe she could sign on with GBM. Maybe there could be a deal with Matchroom having the bigger fights of Terri Harper's career, and then GBM having the less of bigger fights. I don't really know, but there could be something that could happen there, and I think there is a good selection of fighters coming out from Sheffield at the moment. Of course, we have Dalton Smith obviously kind of leading the way at the moment, but GBM with this card, they have Maxi Hughes versus Archie Sharp as well, plus a few other good names on it, and it's showcasing that Sheffield, Doncaster have got some good talent coming out of there. And yeah, I mean, Maxi Hughes and Archie Sharp is a good scrap for the WBC silver lightweight title. Maxi Hughes, of course, his career is on a bit of similar kind of position to Terri Harper, where it's on a bit of an incline after a bit of a dip. And obviously, he went on to, he beat Galahad, and then he went on to fight Cambosos, and then he lost on a very controversial decision. Then he went on to fight, I believe it was Zepeda, and he lost badly in that one. And then now he's went to go to join GBM and fight with them, and now he's, coming off a good fight versus Gary Cully, who was promoted by Matchroom and, was hyped up at one point, and then, Maxi Hughes beat him, and now he's fighting Archie Sharp, who, yes, is coming off a defeat to Ryan Garner, but, has still got a very good record otherwise, and so perhaps, that could be a good win again for Maxi Hughes' career, and probably could push him up the rankings that bit more with the WBC. And then, we'll have to wait and see if Maxi Hughes can get in line for some sort of title shot perhaps again, or at least, maybe eliminator. Of course, we have Shakur versus Zepeda for the WBC title coming up. Perhaps there could be some sort of interim title, or something along them lines for which Maxi Hughes could possibly slide into, which again, like similar to Terri Harper, it's a story in which nobody expected. After Maxi Hughes lost to Zepeda, we never realistically thought he would be able to get back to any sort of heights in his career, but he's definitely making the right steps, and that's what GBM's for seemingly at the moment. Yes, they want to be a big promotion, but at the same time they need to build their fighters, they need to gain trust from big fighters and big names to really let them be controlled in their career, and that's how they're going to get bigger. If they can get something like a Maxi Hughes who's already, on the fringe of a kind of world level, back to a world level, then perhaps he'll want to main event on the big, against a big name in one of their shows. And, that would really drive the traffic towards GBM even more. So I think that what they're doing is great. And I think this is going to be a very good show, and arguably one of the biggest shows in which Doncaster has ever had. And, after the success that they saw with Dave Allen just last weekend, it's a great time to be around that area. And so yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like video if you did indeed like video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.